It is Monday, which means it is time for the fourth Ask Me Anything episode of the NHL season. It should be a good one. As always, you guys asked a ton of awesome questions, and it feels like there's a lot going on in the hockey world right now, so there's no shortage of things to talk about. I hope everybody had a fantastic weekend, and before we get started, if this is your guys' first time checking out the channel and you want NHL content just like this all year round, hit that subscribe button. We're getting super close to 75,000, and with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the first question from BMN, who says, do you think the Sharks could beat an AHL team? And also really appreciate the kind words. I'm glad you like the videos. For as bad as the San Jose Sharks are this season, and they are historically bad, they would absolutely wax any AHL team. I've gotten asked similar questions to this before, like would the best team in the Canadian Hockey League beat the worst AHL team? And it'd be the same answer for that. No, the worst AHL team would absolutely wipe the floor with the best junior team. You have to think of it like this, talking again about NHL teams versus AHL teams. Some of the best players in the American Hockey League, some of the leading scorers on some teams down there, are never even going to become NHL regulars. Basically, any third or fourth line in the NHL would be a first line in the AHL, so again, I think the Sharks would probably destroy any AHL team. The next question we have comes from User, who says Lucas Raymond wasn't producing too much in the first few games of the season, but he seems to be playing some of his best hockey yet. What are your expectations for Lucas Raymond? I'm thinking 70 points is in the realm of possibility as long as he stays healthy. I think Raymond is having a very underrated start to the season. Like you said, the points have started to come as of late. I think he's up to 10 in 12 games, which is really nice to see after he had a bit of a sophomore slump last season. Guys like DeBrincat and Larkin are obviously getting a ton of credit and a ton of attention for the Red Wings' hot start to the season, so that's kind of enabled Lucas Raymond to fly under the radar, but he is a very important piece to that Red Wings top line. He's kind of played as the puck retriever this season. DeBrincat obviously the finisher, Larkin the play driver. Raymond has been the one doing the quote-unquote dirty work. His forechecking has been really good, and overall his play has complemented DeBrincat and Larkin very well. He just got moved up to the top power play unit for the first time this season in the most recent game against the Boston Bruins, and he scored a power play goal. I've definitely been really impressed with what I'm seeing from Raymond so far this season, especially as of late. This next question comes from DeBrincat 70 goals, love the name, who says with Slafkovsky's slow start to the season, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points in 11 games, already do you think it's maybe time to send him to Laval? And also really appreciate the kind words. I'm glad you like the videos. I'm going to go with yes. I do think it's probably time for Slafkovsky to have a stint down in the American Hockey League. It would be different if the counting stats weren't there. He wasn't putting up points, but he was still playing well, generating chances, had solid underlying numbers and that kind of stuff, but that really hasn't been the case. I think he's just looked maybe not a step slow, but his decision making is a step slow, and he's kind of second guessing himself. When it comes to any pro athlete, confidence is huge, but I think it's especially huge when it comes to younger guys, former top draft picks like Slafkovsky is. So I think sending him to Laval, giving him an opportunity to play top line minutes, to see time on the top power play unit and put up some numbers would go a long way in rebuilding his confidence and get him back on the right track. The next question we have comes from this Asian dude, who says if Edmonton doesn't do well this year, does McDavid and or Draisaitl push for something to happen, i.e. trade request, switching coaching / management, splash trade or signing, etc. In my opinion, they've spent way too much of their prime on stuff like this. If the Oilers don't end up turning this season around and ultimately miss the playoffs, even if it's just by a couple of points, I am expecting something sizable to happen when it comes to the Edmonton Oilers in the offseason. As far as a McDavid or Draisaitl trade request, I just can't see it. Even if they were to request a trade, would the Oilers even explore that option? Would they grant their request? I mean, I guess it would be a little bit easier for Draisaitl to do something like this since next season will actually be the final year of his contract. I think a change in management would be far more likely. Ken Holland has made some solid moves as GM of the Edmonton Oilers, but overall I feel like the bad outweighs the good, and I really don't think his tenure with the team can be looked at as a success up until this point. So if the Oilers miss the playoffs, I think, Ken Holland being on the outs would be a lot more likely than a McDavid or Draisaitl trade request or trade. Moving along now to the next question. This one comes from Hatrick Kane, who says, can we talk about Jesper Bratt's insane start to the year after many criticized his new contract from this past offseason? Jesper Bratt is somebody that I don't think gets nearly enough love. $7.875 million for Jesper Bratt through 2030-31 looks like an absolute steal. This is a guy who had back-to-back 73-point seasons coming into this year, and now this season he looks well on track to crack the 100-point mark. He's got 18 points in 11 games, and for the most part, he doesn't even play with Jack Hughes at 5-5. Of course, they're both on the top power play unit and do a lot of damage together there, but man, what a luxury it is for the New Jersey Devils to be able to have a legit bona fide superstar on both your first first and second lines. And to think Jesper Bratt was selected 162nd overall in the 6th round of 2016, easily one of the biggest draft steals of the past decade. The next question we have comes from Tropical NHL Fan, who says, with Vegas currently being 11-0-1, 11-1-1 now thanks to the Ducks last night, do you see this team maybe outperforming last year's Bruins? They won 7-0 over the Avs, who have been hot to start the season. I'm gonna say no. I don't think they're gonna even really come close to finishing with the kind of record that Boston had last season, and that's not a shot against Vegas or anything like that. They've been unreal. I think easily they'll finish as a top 2 seed in the Western Conference, but I feel like the odds of us seeing two of the greatest regular seasons in NHL history happen in back-to-back seasons are incredibly low. The pace you have to maintain through an 82-game schedule to finish with the kind of record Boston finished with last year is just insane, and that's why we really don't see it happen, and that's why last year was so special. Maybe they push 120 points, which would still be a special season. Only a dozen teams in NHL history have finished a regular season with 120 or more points, but I really just cannot see them finishing with more than 135, which is what the Bruins finished with last season. This next question comes from Justin, who says, love the videos, thank you. Do you think Thomas Hertl will get traded by the trade deadline? If so, where could you see him end up? I don't know about this year. I feel like it would be very difficult to trade a 29-year-old who's turning 30 in November that has an $8.1 million cap hit and is signed through 2029-30 and only has 1 goal this season. He also has a no move clause this season and next, and then the final 5 years of his contract, it turns into a modified no trade clause, no movement clause. In my opinion, the ship has kind of sailed on San Jose's opportunity to trade Thomas Hertl and get a sizable return for him. I think they would have got a massive haul for him if they decided to deal him at the trade deadline in 2022, which I think should have happened. Moving along now to the next question. This one comes from a name that I tried to say a couple times. It didn't work out well, so you can see the name there on the screen. Are you concerned at all with Ilya Sorokin's early season slump? He hasn't been terrible, but he has let up some bad goals and has blown some leads. Do you think he can turn it around and have a great season, or is he falling off? And also, really appreciate the kind words. I'm glad you like the videos. If I was an Islanders fan, I would not be worried about Sorokin in the slightest. Heading into the season, I said that I believe Sorokin is the best goalie in the NHL right now. He was my Vezina Trophy pick, and yes, his start to the season has been up and down, maybe a little bit disappointing for his standards, but I think he's going to be fine. And it's really telling that we're talking about Sorokin having a slow start to the season, despite the fact that he still has a .911 save percentage. He still has a positive goal saved above expected. Those would be good numbers for a lot of other goaltenders in the league. We've just come to expect elite play night in and night out from Sorokin, so it's surprising when we don't see that for a stretch of time. Also, I feel like it should be mentioned that the Islanders in front of him defensively, I don't think have been great, and I don't expect that to keep up for a team with the defensive identity that they have. I think they'll tighten things up. I think Sorokin will get going. I wouldn't be worried about him at all. He was my 2nd round draft pick in fantasy this year, and I'm not worried about him. Moving along now to the next question. Dylan Larkin is currently on pace for 116 points. Do you think he has what it takes to hit the 100 point mark this season? Larkin is somebody who I feel like has silenced a lot of doubters over the last couple of seasons. He's taken massive strides, finished with a career high 79 points in 80 games last year. Like you mentioned, this season on pace for 116 with 17 points in 12 games. He's playing with easily the best line mates he's had in his entire career. He has the most talent around him on the entire roster that he's had in his entire career. The power play is the best it's been throughout Dylan Larkin's entire career. We've really seen Dylan Larkin's game be unlocked this season now that he's got a lot more time and space out there, because the whole focal point of the Red Wings offense isn't just Dylan Larkin. Do I think he has what it takes to crack 100 points? I'm gonna say no, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the range of 90 to 95. Overall, I think his point pace is gonna come down, same with DeBrincat, as the Red Wings offensive pace comes down. But the fact that we were even talking about Larkin potentially having a 100 point season is a fantastic sign for the Red Wings, because this is not a conversation I ever thought we'd be having, 3-4 years ago. And now finally for the final question of this week's episode, this one comes from Holy Frick Bro, who says, which juniors duo that got reunited over the offseason has been more of a disaster, Connor Brown and Connor McDavid, or Jonathan Drouin and Nathan McKinnon? Some people may go with Drouin and McKinnon just because Jonathan Drouin has already served as a healthy scratch, but I'm actually going to go with Connor Brown and Connor McDavid. When it comes to Jonathan Drouin, the whole idea of him reuniting with McKinnon and starting the season on Nathan McKinnon's wing was cool and everything, but I don't think anybody really thought that if this whole experiment didn't work out, it would really have all that much of an impact on Colorado's season. They've still got a ton of depth. They have other guys that can play with Nathan McKinnon. It really isn't the end of the world for Colorado, but when it comes to Connor Brown, he was expected to have a pretty big role for the Oilers this season, he was expected to be a big depth piece for them, but Connor Brown has been downright bad, and the Oilers obviously lack depth. The depth has really not been contributing this season. Now, that being said, I do feel like we should cut Connor Brown some slack, given the fact that he's coming off of a season in which he only played a couple of games. He's coming off a major injury, but I would say he's been, the more disappointing of the two, comparing him to Jonathan Drouin, just because I feel like Edmonton was expecting to rely on him a lot more than Colorado was expecting to rely on Drouin. So that is going to wrap up this week's episode of the Ask Me Anything series. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to every single one of you who took the time to come up with a question and leave it on the post. Even the questions that I didn't feature in this video, just know I read every single one and I appreciate all of you guys. If you enjoyed this episode and you want another next week, please be sure to drop a like. That is the best way to show your support. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want NHL content just like this all year round, hit that subscribe button and I'll talk to you all soon.